Andy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you because we're going to talk about Pursuit, which is the leading enterprise platform for engaging outside counsel. So let's talk about Pursuit. What does the company do?
Well, I mean, we're really dealing with a problem that's persisted for over a century. I mean, you've got in-house legal teams. So you think of like a general counsel, chief legal officer, their entire team, large enterprise. They typically spend about half their budget on outside counsel, so law firms or legal service providers who will help them solve problems. Um, the vast majority of them do not have a lot of rigor or transparency in how they select which firm they're going to work with, and even what they're going to pay that firm for the work that they're going to do for them. A lot of it's built around the billable hour. A lot of it's built on personal relationships. If you think about the typical large enterprise, they can be spending two, three, $400 million a year on law firms with really no visibility into what that might look like. It's kind of the last black box of spend within the enterprise.
And it's a category, like I just love companies like Pursuit because it's vertical SaaS. It's a category that hasn't really been disrupted, but there's such an opportunity here.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where we've had a lot of success with, I would call it the early adopters phase. That we've got 80 plus customers, all kind of household names who've adopted not just the platform, but the mentality of engaging their law firms differently in a way that does have that in predictability and really impacting, half their budget that before was kind of out of control. So it does have material impacts around cost savings. A typical customer of ours will save anywhere from 20 to 30% from what they would typically pay. They get the same level of outcome from the law firms. They just put them through a more competitive process. We find that it does improve relationships overall with their firms because the firms kind of know where they stand. If you're a firm trying to work with a large enterprise, you may not get invited to all the different matters that are available, or you may apply to work on some of them. You may not hear back like why you were selected or not selected. So it creates a better engagement overall between the buyer and the supplier in a way that I think is lacking in a lot of these relationships today. And so it does ultimately yield more productive relationships. Like I said, more predictability around what potential could be as far as the scope and cost of a matter, and gives these legal executives really a different way to have their function perceived within the enterprise. Going back to the problem there, where the traditional view is that legal is a cost center, it's a black box. They protect us from the big risk in the world, but kind of be hands off with them because they're trying to solve a problem that is very specific to their world. Uh, we find that that's not the case in the sense of you can apply a different mindset and a different way to approach this problem and get a much better result.
And it's a problem that affects so many companies. I mean, it's the upper tier, the Fortune 500, but also lots of companies. But is there a threshold of the like kind of like the size of an organization's budget as it is allocated towards, outside counsel?
Yeah, I mean, we see applying value to kind of any size legal operation, in-house legal operation. But where our sweet spot really is that Fortune 1000 type company that has a material amount of outside legal spend where this the value really kind of shines through.
All right, so let's talk about Pursuit today. Like, what's the latest with the company in terms of the platform or whatever you can share?
Well, I think one of the interesting things about the platform is that we've had over 14 billion in legal spend go through the platform to date. And what that does is really gives us a unique ability to not only understand what something should cost, which is kind of an elusive thing in this market. If you think about if I'm working on a litigation matter that's based in Des Moines, Iowa, I have no idea what that should cost ultimately. We've got benchmarks in the platform that really inform kind of the bounds of what a typical matter in that situation would cost by phase in a very detailed way. All this kind of granular detail gets us into a place where it fuels the AI capabilities of the platform to be able to increase the levels of automation that happen in there. So our goal really is to make everyone an expert buyer of legal services. And that's not something that people go to law school to do. Really, they go to law school to handle risk and to handle litigation, handle all sorts of different types of legal matters. But buying is not really something they're taught. And so we want to make that really easy for in-house teams in a way that really does kind of remove this as a barrier to making sure that they can find the right firm at the right price at the right time to get the right outcome they're looking for their matters.
All right, so let's talk about the history of Pursuit. Like, what's the whole founding story? How did the company come to fruition?
Yeah, I think that's one of our interesting aspects here is that the founding of Pursuit was really born out of an idea from our founder Jim Del who was a big law partner for a number of years, and he kind of saw the the way that the billable hour was driving these relationships and creating a mindset around the hour being the currency of value rather than what is the outcome we're delivering from a firm perspective. And so set out to try to change that dynamic. And that's where kind of fast forward to today where we are the leaders in helping in-house teams procure and manage these relationships with outside law firms. So he really brings a credibility to this in a way that saw the problem, saw how it was impacting attorneys too at the law firms in sense of like their lives being really kind of ruled by the number of hours they were billing and just the kind of the downward spiral that creates as far as the level of measurement of what's important, uh, being the hour versus the outcome. So that set out to kind of bring us to the future today.
Once someone joins the team at Pursuit, what's the day-to-day culture like?
I think you would see what a typical kind of scale up software company would be like, right? We are uh, dynamic, fast paced. It's a culture of a lot of direct feedback in the sense of we work really hard together, we work cross functionally really well together, and everyone has a mindset of being able to identify problems, being comfortable raising issues that may pop up, and then us tackling those with a lot of grit to go after and get it done. And so, I don't think that's too different than most other startups. I think that where I think we differ in the sense of like the type of customers that we work with, these large household name customers that uh, rely on Pursuit to impact such a big portion of their budget. Uh, that's where I think where our experience really gets really interesting is because being involved with these organizations at the level that we are, uh, a lot of other companies that are at that level are themselves household names, and we are very much punching more of our weight and being relevant and being valuable to these sorts of organizations.
Now, top-tier talent, regardless of market conditions, they always have options. So why should Pursuit be on the top of their radar?
Yeah, I think it's the problem that we solve, right? So we are trying to, and not that we've solved it yet, in the sense of we're disrupting a centuries old mindset that has real impact when the companies do adopt the point of view and they do operate differently and they move into this new operating model of how they want to engage outside counsel. The impact is so dramatic and so positive that we've only scratched the surface in the companies that we've gotten to adopt this point of view. So there's a huge opportunity to not only establish a category, which I know is kind of a buzzy way to think about some things, but we are inventing a new category of um, how this type of engagement happens. And so, for anyone that wants to create, wants to be a pioneer, wants to break through on something that traditionally has not been all that forward thinking, this is a great place to do that in a space that is ripe for disruption.
Well, if you are interested in exploring opportunities at Pursuit, you need to go to their company page on VentureFizz, which has all their job listings there. Go to venturefizz.com/pursuit and you'll see their jobs. Andy, thanks so much for taking the time to bring us up to speed on all the great things happening at the company.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.